Welcome everyone to our Fireside Chat. I am Felice Levine, Executive Director of the American Educational Research Association, and I am here in San Diego for the AERA annual meeting, but I am also here in our virtual space for the AERA annual meeting for this very special event. I have the privilege and honor of co-chairing and co-moderating this very important session with Dr. Oki Lee, a member of AERA Council and a professor at the New York University. Oki.
We are delighted to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Alondra Nelson, Director of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, affectionately called OSTP. And Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan, Director of the National Science Foundation, NSF. Would you mind if we call you Dr. Punch today?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm fine.
Good. The purpose of this featured session, and we know the generosity of your time is really enormous for us and for the science community and the education research community, is to really learn more about the federal priorities in STEM education and in equity and inclusion in STEM education in particular, the issues that are challenging you as you lead, what you see to the opportunities, and how we can work together in bringing those forward in ways that are inclusive across demographics and institutions. We'll do a few little housekeeping details for those attending in place and virtually, and then we'll open it up to hearing from you. Oki.
With any conversation, a fireside conversation is engaging when it involves everyone, including the audience. So this session will kick off with opening remarks by each speakers, followed by a set of questions from Felice and me, along with the questions from the audience, before the closing remarks.
As just a little bit of a housekeeping detail, Dr. George Wimberly, AERA Director of Professional Development, will bring the questions to the fore. So those of you in the audience should open the app and chat and ask those questions that you might wish to frame. Those who are joining virtually should do similarly. Our time is compressed and we want to make sure that we can share as many questions as possible, and those that we cannot respond to in the course of the 1 hour session, we'll get back to you with thoughts and information to help you carry our collective effort forward. So with that, I'd like to call upon Dr. Nelson to begin this conversation.
Thank you so much, Felice. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, perfectly.
Great. Well, it is a pleasure to join you, the AERA community, and to be with you today under the leadership of the presidency of Dr. Naila Swad Nasir, who is a colleague and friend of longstanding. And I have to say, I wish I was there in person with you. Having grown up in San Diego, I know everyone there is enjoying that very special and beautiful city. I hope to be able to join you another time. Dr. Levine and Dr. Lee, thank you for the invitation to be with you today. And of course, it is always a distinct pleasure and honor to be side by side and colleague in conversation with my colleague and friend, Dr. Panchanathan. So I want to begin today by commending the AERA for focusing this year's annual conference on the theme of cultivating equitable education systems for the 21st century. This is a top priority for us at the White House Office of Science and Technology, where our mission is to maximize the benefits of science and technology to advance health, prosperity, security, environmental quality, and justice for all Americans. And I know that education and research sit at the very center of that mission. From the beginning of the administration, President Biden really identified was clear that that we needed to do a couple of things. One, harness the full power of science and technology to make life better, safer, and fairer for everyone. And also that equity from day one was is a cornerstone of the administration. equity of opportunity, equity of resources, and equity of outcomes for all of the American public. On his first day in office 15 months ago, the president issued a slate of executive orders on equity and tasked the federal government with pursuing a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all, including people of color and others who've been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Now, we know that science and technology are powerful tools for achieving these equity goals, and so too does President Biden. In a letter he wrote shortly before taking office, he asked, how can we guarantee that the fruits of science and technology are fully shared across America and among all Americans? And this has been the charge that we've taken up at OSTP and are committed to helping others across the federal government and the research community to do in partnership with us. So we're doing this in quite a few ways at OSTP, and I'm pleased to have the chance to share with you in my remarks today a few examples of this. And I would be happy to elaborate in conversation with Dr. Ponch and also in conversation with all of you. Just to begin with one example, just this month, OSTP released its own equity action plan, its first ever, along with more than 90 other federal departments and agencies, including the NSF, as requested by President Biden's day one order. To give you a sense of what a priority equity is in the Biden-Harris administration, I believe by mandate, only about 30 departments and agencies had to submit equity plans. And as I just said, more than 90 responded. In the OSTP plan, we described how our organization is committed to advancing both equity and science and technology, and science and technology for the work of equity. Because of OSTP's ability to directly influence national science and technology policy decision-making, and also the role that we play in convening federal agencies across government and the entities outside of it, OSTP is uniquely positioned to pursue these goals of equity in and equity for science and technology. For one example, OSTP is working to expand opportunities for all in science and technology, from education to workforce to basic research, and to actively engage with the American public on these and other issues that are critical to the health, innovation, and competitiveness of our nation. It's crucial that everyone be able to participate and contribute to science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the health sciences. This is the bedrock of any new scientific and technological insight that we hope to garner. It's how our nation will remain globally competitive, and it is the just thing to do. While I'm on the topic of competitiveness, I wanted to thank AERA for supporting the bipartisan innovation and competition bills known as the USICA and the American Competes Acts that are currently being negotiated in the House and the Senate. President Biden has called for Congress to send him a final bipartisan innovation act for him to sign into law. And of course, we at OSTP share AERA's commitment that research and development that this legislation will make possible at historic levels is critically important, and that federal leadership and funding will drive American education and science and technology that can benefit all of us. For all of these reasons, we at OSTP are developing and advancing a broad, bold vision for STEM excellence and STEM equity that will help to ensure the United States continues to lead in science and technology while fostering substantive public participation in science and technology for as many in the American public who hope to do so. One way we've been doing this is through an initiative called The Time Is Now, Advancing Equity in Science and Technology. The goal of this initiative is to identify, develop, support, and amplify evidence-based policy interventions that can advance equity in science and technology. So this initiative draws its very name from a critical, engaged piece that was published in the journal Science by Professors Hannah Al-Samed and Lola Adefeso. These researchers and science community leaders powerfully identified structural inequities in STEM, and they issued a call to action for OSTP to lead the way in advancing equity and inclusion in science and technology. So we've worked very hard to respond to this call from these two colleagues and also from the larger research community. We've been hosting a roundtable series to learn from members of the American public about barriers to inequity in science and technology. These discussions thus far have been candid, they have been honest, they have been focused. We've invited researchers, professional organizations, community advocates, and others to really diagnose the endemic issues of structural inequality. We've also asked folks to suggest informed solutions, ideas to ensure that all people can equitably participate and thrive in science and technology. So in this process, we also created an ideation challenge that we also called The Time Is Now. And we heard from the broader American public, from students and skilled technical workers, from equity advocates, creatives, and education leaders, to a wide range of people who use science and technology in their everyday lives. And this initiative has highlighted some crucial insights, like the importance of building educational and career bridges and on-ramps to ensure that people of all backgrounds can start with and encounter healthy environments that encourage them to remain on the path to, and indeed to thrive in, a career in STEM or in innovation as well. As educational researchers, I know that you are keenly aware of the extraordinary outcomes that are possible when young people are exposed to science and technology, and indeed education more broadly early on. But that life in innovation, that life of discovery, needs to be in reach for even those who never go to a science camp, for example. The truth is that it's never too late to get started, and our charge is really to lower the barriers to participation and inclusion. Drawing on the insights and best practices we've learned throughout the Time Is Now initiative, OSTP is now in the process of developing a strategy document to support the advancement of equity and excellence for all in our nation's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics ecosystem. So beyond our work on STEM equity, we've also been engaged in a leadership role in a whole of government endeavor called the Equitable Data Working Group that I'd be happy to say a bit more about in the conversation. And I hope that many in your community have been tracking our recent year of action for evidence, which launched with a summit a couple of weeks ago that I'd also be happy to say more about. But I will stop there and turn things over to Panch.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to join you today. As always, truly a delight and an honor to share the stage with Dr. Alondra Nelson, the OSTP director. She's doing amazing things there. Thank you so much, Alondra. I would like to thank everyone who worked so hard to organize this year's annual meeting. And it's truly a pleasure also to be with the co-coordinators of this particular session, Dr. Levine and Dr. Lean. Opportunities like this, whether it is in person or virtual, are vital to the future success of our nation's STEM enterprise and are critical for sharing ideas, building connections, and generating new opportunities. So the AERA, the American Educational Research Association, plays such an important role in helping to advance our knowledge about education and in encouraging the use of fundamental research and scholarly inquiry to improve the academic landscape across our country. We all know that our nation's STEM enterprise is now facing a unique and defining moment. Technological advancements and scientific breakthroughs are happening at an exceptional rate and are rapidly reshaping our nation's STEM enterprise. At the same time, the United States leadership in science and engineering is facing intense global competition. I always say global competition is only motivating us, inspiring us to do more, better, faster. So to capitalize on this moment, NSF is being challenged by our nation's leaders to supercharge our nation's innovative capacity to push the frontiers of discovery like never before. To do this, therefore, it is imperative that we dramatically expand opportunity and access for all, that's the underscore, all, and mobilize the unrealized talent that is embedded in every single community across our great nation. In a recently released National Science Board 2022 Science and Engineering Indicators report, the findings emphasized that despite marginal gains in various areas, the representation of women, Black, Hispanic, American Indian, or Alaskan Native community members in our STEM workforce is still significantly smaller than the representation of the US population. We cannot have this continue. Another report published by the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation has shown that only 12% of US innovators are women and only 8% are members of other minority groups. Again, as I said earlier, not an acceptable outcome. So we have to work hard to change this, and NSF is working really hard with many other partners, with OSTP, with other agencies, industry, foundations, and with all of you in order for us to make that change that we also desire. We all know that the lack of diversity in scientific workforce illustrates that considerable talent, ideas, and new approaches are being left out of the US innovation ecosystem. This leaves us with a national STEM enterprise that is not representative of the incredible diversity we see in our country, a diversity that is essential to maintaining US innovative capacity and global leadership in science and engineering. In fact, I would argue that without the diversity of ideas, experiences, context, and demography, we will not be doing justice. We will be shortchanging, on the other hand, our innovative potential. The resources, funding, and initiatives that NSF is deploying to broaden participation are meant to address these gaps and serve as the seeds for strengthening and diversifying the STEM community. To foster real growth and making lasting change, we need to create environments that value inclusivity and diversity at every level of an individual STEM journey. Since becoming director of NSF, I've been sharing the vision for the agency that will allow us to meet these challenges and seize the opportunities ahead. In very simple terms, the vision has three core pillars. They are advancing the frontiers of research into the future, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity as a central pillar, literally, and securing global leadership in science and technology. The success of all these three pillars is built on a foundation of robust partnerships with every type of agency, industry, and institution, as I mentioned earlier. As an agency, we have continued to focus our efforts and distill our vision down to three major priorities. These priorities are guiding each of our strategic actions every day and helping to advance the NSF mission across all areas of science and engineering. First, we are going to continue to strengthen the established NSF. Very, very important. Why? Because over the last 70 years, more than 7 decades, we have made investments in researchers, infrastructure, and programs that have expanded the frontiers of knowledge and technology. Enabling these fundamental breakthroughs will continue to be the heart of what we do and what we should do and must do. Second, we are inspiring the missing millions, as I call them, across the country. That those ideas and those talent that are being left behind, not being included, given the opportunities that they so richly deserve. This is crucial to me in addressing the need that we talked about. That is, how do we get knowledge, ideas, and talent completely brought in order for us to be in the vanguard of competitiveness and to promote societal prosperity and a robust economy. So the need for equity and inclusion across all scientific disciplines is ever so important. To push the frontiers of discovery to new heights, we are working with our partners in all 50 states to scale up existing on-ramps into science and engineering and create new pathways into STEM to ensure we are leveraging all the talent and ideas from everywhere across our great nation. Finally, we are accelerating the development of technology and innovation at speed and scale. This will be a major focus for NSF in the coming years and will have enormous implications for the nation's innovative capacity, our economic growth, and our global competitiveness. In order to broaden participation across STEM education and enhance opportunities, build capacity, and increase student uptake and career sustainability, there are a few NSF initiatives I would like to highlight very briefly with you all today, and we can discuss more. The first and foremost is NSF Includes. In August of last year, we invested $50 million in 5 new NSF Includes alliances. Through the establishment of these alliances and national network, NSF Includes continues to bring together resources and foster strategic partnerships to coordinate, to conduct, and share new research that can enhance our broadening participation efforts and ensure the inclusion of individuals from historically underrepresented groups in STEM education. Since its inception, NSF has funded 13 alliances and developed a national network that includes over 3,000 members, including over 1,200 partners that span academia, government, and industry across 49 states with 36,000 active participants. Recently, just a few weeks ago, NSF announced a new collaboration with Intel to launch a joint program focused on supporting research and workforce development to advance semiconductor design and manufacturing, because this is a very important moment for semiconductor design, manufacturing, fabrication at home. Intel plans to invest approximately $100 million over the next decade in partnership with NSF, Ohio universities, and community colleges throughout the region. Racial equity in STEM education is a huge focus of NSF. NSF's Human Resources Directorate, EHR, has launched the Racial Equity in STEM Education program to support bold, groundbreaking, and potentially transformative projects addressing systemic racism in STEM. Research supported by this program will consider systemic barriers to opportunities and benefits, and how these barriers impact access, retention, and success in STEM education research and workforce development. We all know that science and technology are naturally intertwined, and it is this double helix of exploratory research in synergy with translational research that enables progress and is essential to NSF's approach to broadening participation across STEM education. That is why we call it the DNA of NSF. And it is how we are going to make transformational leaps forward in discovery and innovation. Another aspect of NSF I would like to highlight is that we believe cross-cutting and multidisciplinary thinking is essential to strengthening NSF's mission and necessary for progress to be made in all fields of science and technology. Empowering the missing millions will help to enhance diverse perspectives and experiences crucial to advancing our nation's enterprise. So I'm so excited that we have launched a new cross-cutting directorate, the first directorate in 31 years that is different from any of the offices and directorates that have come before it. This new Technology Innovation Partnerships Directorate, or TIP for short, will help us reach these goals at speed and scale by spreading the geography of discovery and innovation across the country, making it easier to partner across the United States to work together and create even more on-ramps into STEM. This is truly an exciting time for our nation's STEM enterprise. And I'm delighted to be here with you today to share with you our priorities and re-articulate the importance of broadening participation across the STEM disciplines and throughout our nation's educational arena. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be here with you all today, and I look forward to our discussion.
Well, that is quite a set of ambitions, to say the least, and we really applaud what you're doing, the leadership you're providing, and that vision, both short and long term. So let me ask a little bit about the low-hanging fruit. When you think, both of you think about what you could chip away at first, I think this fact gathering, the community engagement, the conversations you've had across the scientific community, the practice and policy communities has been extraordinary. And when you think about what are the ways you could chip away first, including with the new directorate, where would your emphases be?
So I think the emphasis is clearly to ensure that ideas and talent, which are democratized all across our nation, needs to be quickly brought into full force and full scale in our enterprise, in our research enterprise, as well as in our K-12 enterprises, community colleges, tribal colleges. No talent or ideas should be left behind. That's the highest priority. And that cannot be done unless we can partner. This is why I'm so excited to partner with Dr. Nelson. She's an amazing leader, putting forth an agenda and a vision, as she outlined, for the entire nation. And how might all the agencies work together with the industry, with foundations, with all the entities that we talk about to unleash this? That is the top priority. I would like Dr. Nelson, I don't want to take all the time.
Alondra, if I could just slip into that question.
Yeah, Felice.
I'm so drawn by the year-long commitment for this action for evidence, and it seems almost no place more important than here, and I just wondered whether you might include that in your response.
that was actually where I was going to go with my response,
Excellent.
actually. So it's not, I don't know if I would call it low-hanging fruit, but I think there are real opportunities here. There's, legislation like the Evidence Act of 2018 that really makes it possible for government at the first time to be really committed to evidence-informed, science-informed policymaking in a really robust way. So we have you have the impetus of legislation, and then we have a president and an administration that's deeply committed to using evidence and using science and using research and policymaking. So, so I'll say a little bit about that. So we kicked off a couple of weeks ago this year of evidence for action. And one of the key pillars is really increasing connections and collaborations between researchers, other knowledge producers that may or may not be within universities, and decision makers both inside and outside of government. And doing this work, we really are drawing on, trying to use the best evidence, including things that I think we take for granted sometimes in academia, which are things like meta-analyses. Like there's been generations of research that tell us very important insights about important things that we want to study. And this goes to, I think, some of the points that Panch was making as well. How do we mobilize and galvanize what we know as researchers in the work of government in service to the American public? So it's critical that we learn really from and build on this best-in-class evidence on many topics, including those related to equity and STEM. We've been able to partner with NSF on a pilot that's called the Analytics for Equity Initiative, which we announced at the Summit for Evidence on Action. And in this initiative, NSF will fund researchers to respond directly to priority research questions raised by federal agencies, not only including by NSF itself, but the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, CDC, Labor, and the EPA. So it's a real opportunity for researchers to partner with the NSF and with government and the White House. And we're moving forward with a similar mission to the TIP directorate, this new directorate that Dr. Panch just described, and trying to think about how to mobilize the research community and the federal government together in lockstep to really address some of our nation's most pressing challenges. So I don't know that you want to think of it as a turn to sort of applied research necessarily, but I love Panch's idea of the DNA of the helix of both the sort of applied and translational research, as well as basic exploratory research. These things need to be together, but we can do a much better job. And that this, I think, Felice, is the low-hanging fruit of really driving forward the data, the evidence, the experience that we have in places like educational research, and make that a central part of how we shape policy.
We are grateful that both at the top levels of a White House and the NSF, the discourse is STEM education and STEM workforce with a focus on equity and justice, and that is really incredible. So in that regard, we are the education research community as AERA, and you have been talking about partnership. What do you see the role of the AERA as an entity of the education research organization on STEM education, particularly K through 12 and higher education? What would you ask of us of the role of education research? So we contribute, but you can also leverage us to reach your priorities.
Why don't you let Dr. Nelson start off this time? We are going to take turns.
Okay. So I would say just to be willing to be engaged. This is my first time working in government, and I think one of my sort of big lessons here is that researchers need to be engaged in government and really need to be walking across that, we call it a knowledge bridge. Be willing to reach out to colleagues in government who have incredible work that they're trying to do and could really benefit from partnership with you. So I think take the risk of being willing to be engaged and staying engaged. And there are ways to participate, as I mentioned, in the Year of Evidence for Action. You can also, we opened with OMB just an email address, which is evidence@omb.eop.gov, where you can email us. It'll come to OMB and OSTP, your ideas about how to put your research into practice and policy. You can learn more about the Analytics for Equity initiative that I mentioned that we're partnering with NSF on by emailing NSF's Evaluation and Assessment Capability Office at eac@nsf.gov. And you may or may not know that part of what OSTP does in partnership with NSF and NIH is form this federal committee on STEM education, which also is called CoSTEM. That's part of the National Science and Technology Council. And that work brings together departments and agencies that have a stake in STEM education, which I think, given how central STEM education and workforce is to, as I've discussed and Dr. Punch as well, everything we're trying to accomplish as a nation is, I think, one of the most important committees that there are in the federal government. And so there are opportunities to engage this Committee on Education and listening sessions as they begin to put forward ideas for another strategic plan. I'll also let you know that, that this CoSTEM released a best practices report for diversity inclusion in STEM, as well as a prior strategic plan for representations of veterans and military spouses in STEM education. So there's actually quite a lot of ways to be involved in the STEM education space. And I wouldn't begin or presume to represent what Secretary Cardona and our colleagues in the Department of Education are doing. But I really would just say, drop me a line, drop folks at OSTP a line. We really do, Professor Lee, want you all to be engaged and are willing to work hard to find ways for people to plug in. And that includes, honestly, good meta-analyses, good, op-eds that help us to synthesize research about particular issues. So engaging in the public sphere variously and engaging in the broader research community, all of that is deeply beneficial for the work of government.
Excellent. And so I'll just add, it's a comprehensive response. So what I will add is, your community is where the ideas are there. Your community is where the talent training happens. So everything that you're doing is what we need right now, but we need to strengthen that at speed and scale, as I often say. Yoki, for example, you are part of our advisory committees. You provide fantastic inputs. You and your colleagues provide fantastic inputs, shape our programs, to shape our thinking as we go into the future. So inputs are exceedingly valuable. So feel free to send the inputs. As Alondra said, we are always seeking inputs from the community, because this is about you all, because you're doing the work. And how can we help facilitate and catalyze that work to happen at speed and scale? So that's a very important thing. The second thing I would say is you have tremendous partnerships. You really understand, you're on the ground working. Your partnerships are exceedingly valuable. So to the extent that your partners are partnering again with us, that can then further help broaden our thinking and make sure that whatever we are proposing here, for example, when we talk about the EHR's new racial equity program, we are putting it out there based on the feedback that we have received, and we're hoping that it's going to be widely successful because it is bringing together academic researchers, all of you, along with other community partners and other partners. So, constant feedback, constant engagement, and helping us shape these things better. Where we are coming from, what we are desirous of doing, and we are all in perfect alignment there. So now how to get it done is where we need your help. And therefore, I would say actively participate with NSF, the program officers, and other agencies, most importantly, OSTP. So I think we are here to work with you. And the greatest thing that we can ask of you is tremendous partnership.
Well put. And I think we see this playing out right on this screen. The two of you are scientists who came to public service to do that kind of collaborative work. The estates of science happen in the federal science workforce. Certainly the federal appointees, as you are, all of us here across communities of science working together, and the private sector that is equally committed to shared goals. I myself was privileged and honored to start as a visiting what was called rotator at the National Science Foundation, which was a sea change in my life, and what I thought was 2 years turned out to be almost 12. So those of you who haven't thought about that kind of contribution, please do. But I'm going to go back to the missing millions in STEM, and what we can do both to enhance that kind of science literacy, deeper knowledge and appreciation from an educative point of view, and how that can shape sea change in institutions and not only in individuals. I know that's something you're deeply committed to as a kind of a systemic approach to making a difference for change in the scientific workforce. And I wondered if you might want to speak a little bit to that challenge and that primary goal.
I might ask Punch to start, since the missing millions is really a beautiful analytic of NSF.
Thank you very much, Alondra. I mean, it's a partnership, so always. So, we have identified the challenge, and the challenge means that challenge essentially is telling us that we need to now be highly inclusive. We have to inspire, motivate, nurture talent everywhere across the nation, rural, urban, across the broad socioeconomic demographic, across the rich racial tapestry of our great nation. So how do we do that? Now, let me take one example. When you ask the question, why are the minority serving institutions who do a fantastic job of training talent, why are they not able to participate as much in the NSF as we would like, right? You could pose the question that way, right? But I would say that it is because of the fact, I'll give you one example. It's because of the fact that the infrastructure for taking the fantastic ideas, we all know ideas are democratized and are everywhere, rich ideas, powerful ideas, and talent is everywhere. Then how do we take those ideas and then put it into a form that they can then be successful in the NSF, as we call the gold standard merit review criteria? That's because institutions that have the resources are able to provide the necessary infrastructure for people to be able to put those ideas into the form that then garners the support from NSF, right? So how do we make sure that every institution, whether it is a minority serving institution, R2 institution, tribal colleges, community colleges, and even some K-12 institutions, how do we make sure that they have the ability to be able to take their ideas and lift it up? So at NSF, we are launching a new program, just as one example I'm giving you, called Granted. This is about how we can provide a virtual research development, research office kind of a thing that they may not have in their institution, but yet it is accessible to them so they too can take their fantastic ideas and be able to turn them into successful proposal activity. So when I came in, I said, we need to do something to change this by ensuring that everybody has not only access to, we all know the talent and ideas are everywhere, as I said, but everybody has access to the proposal development opportunities and the pre-award, post-award opportunities, so that they are able to compete fairly and squarely and win with the strength of their ideas. So this is something that I strongly believe in, and we're about to launch this effort as one example of how NSF is looking at ways in which we can actually make tangible impact and tangible difference. And through that, we will get even more broader participation of students across our nation in the STEM activities. So I'm confident that if more we are able to think outside the box and come up with innovative ways in which we are able to address the problem, then we will be able to get real tangible movement.
If I may add, this administration really focuses on STEM and equity as the center and core of the administration's priorities. It's almost like that when we talk about the missing millions, it provided the impetus for the workforce, the infrastructure, the bipartisan act, just like that the conversation of the missing millions is a foundation for the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan bill. So it really leads very, very nicely of how the two go together. And I hope that would be the mechanism for the OSTP, that we hope that the AERA community and education community will become more and more familiar, in addition to NSF, to work together, and we hope to play a role in it.
Well,
yes. Sorry, Lisa. No, I was just going to say that's exactly right. I mean, if you the nerds among us, and I know there are many there in the ballroom with you, who look at legislation that's been passed or that's pending, see a real recognition of the need for systemic change. And exactly as Dr. Lee was saying, that STEM, education, workforce equity issues sit at the very center of it all. So it's a quite extraordinary reimagination of, you know, STEM not as this kind of ancillary thing over here, but really as the center. And I think to Pancha's point, it really does. I mean, you know, part of the lesson that I've learned in the last 15 months really is that we really need to reimagine. If STEM is going to play that role, we've got to reimagine how we think of it. And part of it is that it needs to be, I've said this before, a space of abundance and not of weeding out, right? So that STEM among, you know, others of, you know, academic or disciplinary sort of sectors or skill sets has been the place where we've really allowed, you know, exclusionary practices to prevail. So, you know, you know, so that it's been okay to sort of say, well, everyone should be adept in social studies and in history and in English, but everyone can't get STEM, and so they can't be included in STEM. And so I think the responsibility of the federal government and the challenge that we face is a wholesale reimagining of STEM and an understanding that there should be a possibility for anyone who wants to participate in STEM to participate, and that it is the responsibility of government, of industry, you know, of the nonprofit sector to make those possibilities, to imagine and help reimagine those possibilities. And that includes, you know, a range of new tasks from things like crowdsourcing and community-based science, things like getting better at science communication, in addition to the sort of, you know, invaluable work of the classroom as well. Felice, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No. And I underscore what you just said, and I want to invite to hear what our attendees are posting. Dr. Wimberly, what questions are most salient that you're seeing?
Okay, great, thank you. We have one question here. First question is about scientific integrity. Many education researchers rely on federal data sets for their work. Can you just describe key actions at OSTP or NSF to ensure the integrity of data produced by these federal agencies?
Alondra, do you want to take that first?
Sure. I'll start with that. So this actually is an opportunity to, I think, link together the Equitable Data Working Group report, which just came out on Friday, which I'll say a little bit about, and our work around scientific integrity. So as I've mentioned, evidence-based policymaking, evidence-informed policymaking, and equitable data are really central concerns, or deeply connected, and they're central concerns of this administration. So in addition to doing that day one equity EO, and it was the first executive order of President Biden on equity, there was a week one executive order on scientific integrity, with an understanding that scientific integrity helps necessarily to build trust in government. And so part of that stood up a task force that released a few months ago this a report called Protecting the Integrity of Government Science. And that an understanding, this goes to the data question, that open science and indeed open data are really essential enablers of scientific integrity. And if we're thinking of scientific integrity always tied to that trust in government piece that the president added to this presidential memorandum, then it is necessarily the case that researchers and indeed members of the public who want to have access to government data should be able to have access to them. So I think I would only in some ways agree with the impetus of the questioner's question. And then I would just add to that a little bit about the Equitable Data Working Group. So for a year, this group has been meeting together and consulting researchers, both community-based researchers and academic researchers, advocacy groups, colleagues from industry, precisely around the issue of how best to get government data to be useful for the work of government and to better serve the American public. And so some of this is, for example, the recommendations of the report, which came out on Friday, include building, better visualization, platforms and the like that make data more readily available to academic researchers, but also to the American public. And also include things like having a really serious conversation that census will lead around racial and ethnic categories that are used in the census. and also making disaggregated data available to researchers that allows folks to get researchers to see kind of overlapping intersectional experiences. So while it's fantastic that we have with the census some of the best data in the world, we know that many of the questions that we want to ask about equity in particular and equity assessment require that we have more kind of cross-cutting and often more granular data, but privacy-preserving data. And so the work of the Equitable Data Working Group offers just released some recommendations that we will begin to move forward in trying to implement that I think will both provide greater access to data for researchers and also the kind of data that can help researchers and government and industry work together to more equitably do its work.
Again, this is a fantastic response. So hardly anything to add there. This is a fantastic example of a partnership with OSTP and NSF and other agencies. I want to highlight that. And the second thing I want to say is some of the data that we are trying to gather requires, because I'm talking to the fantastic researchers of AERA, we need you all to help us to gather the data too. Please, because data is only as good as how much data we are able to get and how comprehensively we can gather the data from all of you, because sometimes we're trying to gather data about the kinds of things that we're doing with all of you. So it's important for all of you, therefore, to also be, joining in this data gathering experience that we're all working together so that we can have the data that we need to be able to make evidence-based decisions and conclusions. So it will be greatly helpful if you all open up your data sources and share it with us too in turn. So thank you so much.
Our next question, given the global nature of the STEM community, how will international researchers and international perspectives be incorporated into the equity agenda?
Very much so. I mean, we always talk about this, at least the presentations I make, I talk about this as a twin set of opportunities that we have at the same time. How do we get the maximal amount of domestic talent inspired, motivated, nurtured, and realized? At the same time, how do we get the maximal amount of international talent that is attracted and welcomed here? So the combination of the two of them is going to most certainly keep us in the vanguard of competitiveness. No question about that. Because we know we are competing with nations which have probably 3 times, 4 times our population. So clearly, one of the things that we do great here is because we are a democracy. And so that I always say innovation thrives and prospers in a democratic environment, right? And then now you add to that the fact that we are able to welcome talent and groom talent, domestic talent at the same time at scale, means that we have no question about whether we are going to be in the vanguard of prosperity and being a global leader. And by global leader, I mean also joining with other nations who share our values of openness, transparency, reciprocity, research integrity that you talked about, as well as respect for intellectual property and a whole host of others, working on a shared leadership paradigm. And that's how we are going to bring the best innovation. I was talking about the diversity earlier, diversity of ideas, experiences, context, and others is what is going to make innovation, fully vibrant. And therefore, that also includes the perspectives that come from international folks who come here, including myself, if I could add myself into that, being able to be part of this unbelievable innovation crucible that we have in our nation. So absolutely, in everything that we do, we are always constantly thinking through what might we do to better engage our international partners.
It's a fantastic question. I would just echo some of what Panch said. One is that having both an international strategy for STEM and for educational excellence and a domestic one should not be viewed as a zero-sum game. And that there might be different strategies and different levers in the policy space, but that both are necessary and that we can excel and succeed at both. So I would say that, and we need to, I think, keep thinking about that. And this goes back, I think, to my earlier point about abundance. So what does the federal government need to create a space of abundant attraction to some of the best talent, and also to make a space of thriving and growth and opportunity for any domestic STEM talent that wishes to pursue that. We at OSTP, we also, I just wanted to, in February, we participated in some events around the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And so we also try to lean into opportunities to think about education, about STEM, and about diversity that are happening in the international space. And we link those two because it was February, Black History Month, this was an opportunity to say, let's celebrate the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, and also intersectionally, let's talk about women and girls in color who lead in science and technology. And we did that with an event with the Smithsonian Institution called Water Unites Us. It was the theme of International Women in Science for 2022 was about water. So that's, I think, another way that we can do it. But I would lastly just add, echoing one of Pancha's points, that international collaboration has never been more important, and it is, rarely been more challenging. And so that we have to be, really intentional. I mean, it is the case that, the geopolitics swirling around us will impact people's opportunities to travel, to participate in conferences, to participate in basic research and the like. And so we need to be mindful of the space of science and technology policymaking around international collaboration, and the fact that it's dynamic, and that we have to be dynamic in the way, we like to think of a 5-year grant program or these sorts of things, but it's a dynamic space, and we need to be, often more nimble in the international collaboration space than we might like to be as policymakers.
Next question here. As we think about the next generation of scientists, how might NSF and OSTP support STEM projects beginning in preschool or elementary school?
So, NSF is working in partnership with K-12 institutions, as we talked about, school systems. But the important thing also that we need to keep in mind is that industry, foundations, and also joining with other agencies like Department of Ed, NASA, and others is a partnership that NSF is engaged in. I think we need an all of government, but all institutions partnering in order for us to scale this. This is the crux of the issue, right? Because if you get the fantastic, instead of using the word pipeline, I would say pathways, the fantastic talent in the K-12 system, energized with multiple pathways of exercising the talent, whether it is through community colleges, other vocational streams, 4-year colleges, universities, whatever it is, that requires us to first make sure the K-12 system is very robust. And that involves, of course, in terms of engaging with science teachers and how we have the existing teachers who are there in schools, how they might be empowered, how they might be valued, how they might be, trusted with more of, this inspiration that we are looking for. So in our youth. So that's a very important part of it. How do we work with teachers, colleges in the universities today that are now producing the teachers of the future, how they might be even more inspirational as they go into the workforce. So there's a lot to be done at so many levels. And so NSF is engaged not only by itself trying to do things, but more importantly, I emphasize these partnerships every day. How might we scale through partnerships? How might we be more effective through partnerships? So that's how we as an agency, that's how we think that we can do this better.
I would just underscore the important role of teachers and mentors, be those STEM teachers and mentors, or K-12 teachers and mentors who work in often a broader swath of fields. And it's really important to look to support practitioners, teachers in the classroom, as well as researchers who can help us really identify the expertise and the best practices for really developing our nation's talent in this space. And we've been delighted to be able to partner not only with NSF, with the Department of Education and other agencies and departments across the government to think this through. In February, we hosted with OSTP, with NSF, the Smithsonian, NASA, and the Department of Education, a symposium focused on cultivating an inclusive STEM teacher workforce. And so I think that as we're thinking about issues of equity, we need to really think about the K-12 classroom and around how to sort of build equity in the teacher and mentoring pool, and also how that is just a catalyzing and exponential force for how to do that in the K-12 classroom as well.
I would like to extend just a comment of not only K-12 science teachers, but K-12 science teachers are working with 50 million K through students in public schools, not including. And if they have a parent or one guardian, that's a 50 million. You're talking about 100 million immediately who STEM educators are reaching out. And then US has a 330 million, and that's, you're talking about at least half of the population through K through 12 students who live. And the reason why it is important to think about K through 12 education is I really appreciate the comment about the challenges are actually opportunities, that right now, K through 12 students, every one of us are going through COVID-19, climate change, that is a local, that is a global, it's a real. It's not science as esoteric or foreign in the future, only those smart kids, but it's me today, wearing a mask or not, or why we have so much of weather disasters. So I would like to ask, I'm so delighted that two of you are at the national level leadership, working toward all the partnerships of government agencies, but also industry. And we are entering as a K through 12 education through education research community to work together. So please, work together with us, and we work with all the students in public schools.
Absolutely. We need you. That's why we are here. So because we need you, we need your partnership, we need your intellect, we need your ideas, we need everything that you have to offer, because that's how we're going to actually make this all work.
So this session has been mostly enlightening and informative of what's happening. We look forward to having this discussion at the AERA annual conferences to update on almost like a state of union of what's happening on STEM, on equity. So before we go, what would be your key takeaways for us or asks of the education research community to push for the STEM education with equity? Perhaps about a minute each of you.
First, Dr. Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Punch. I would start by returning to your phrase, Dr. Lee, about this being both a challenging and time and one for opportunity. And I think one of the takeaways of the pandemic that we've been living through is that never has our nation been so focused as a whole on education and on the classroom. And it's an extraordinary moment to sort of, particularly the K-12 classroom, and particularly the use of educational technology. So we've had concerns about, the need to have affordable high-speed internet. I mean, I really think that the focus on education was helping us with working with students became a kind of microcosm on some of the changes that we need to make for young people in particular in American society. So access to high-speed internet, whether or not educational technology is being helpful or surveillant, what is the kind of technology and the tools that help students pay attention in class? How do we address learning loss? How do we use technology to help people sort of upskill or reskill? And how do we, think about technology in the classroom during the pandemic and afterwards in a way that is clear about the stakes for privacy and protecting people's rights and these sorts of things. So I would say, I would ask that some of the people in your community really take the pandemic as an opportunity to do some research and help us to understand some of the most important issues around technology access, learning resources, learning loss, class size. It feels like it is a kind of, microcosm of some of the most pressing questions that we have around education in our nation.
That's a fantastic point. And I just would say, you asked about key takeaways. So, this is a fantastic point that Dr. Nelson has brought. I think this is a very key moment. Because of the focus that you have in this conference here, which I think is fantastic. Equity is paramount if we want to truly guarantee prosperity. Let's all work to make sure that we are focused on, ensuring that we are promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion at the heart of everything that we think about and everything that we do. That's the first thing. The second thing is partnerships, as we talked about, is key to scaling and speeding up progress. So let's all work together as partners, but also let's bring together other partners that are yet not there that we think that we need to be brought into this so that we can really get this done together as a community. And as I said, finally, your ideas and your engagement is what is going to make it all happen. We are facilitators, right? We are catalysts. We are trying to make sure that we are providing those things that you think are important so that you can get the job done. So not to put all the burden on you, but it's going to get done by you. And therefore, we are here to work with you to make sure that we provide the environment and occasionally resources to make that happen. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to be with you today. It's been truly a pleasure.
Well, I am in the enviable position of being able to thank you both. Thank you both for being with us for this hour. Thank you both for what you are doing in such an important leadership role. But I also have to say, I'm in the unenviable position of needing to close this hour when you've opened up so many opportunities for us, NSF as the lead agency to advance the health and well-being of science across all fields of science, including in our field, and to understand how investments in sustained knowledge building make a difference. OSTP, I suppose I'm inside the Beltway much of my life in recent decades, so the Office of Science and Technology Policy is an agency that is instrumental in making those partnerships happen and leading in a way where we can all work together to achieve all of the goals that you've set forth is something we want to do with and for you. Know the science community is with you, and the education research community intends to work on your agenda to make a difference for the public good. Really, thanks from our hearts, and have a great day. I know, Dr. Ponch, you're about to get on a travel trip, and I'm sure you've got a busy agenda, and Dr. Nelson as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsie.
Thank you all so much. Great to be with you.
Yep.
Thank you.